The path to enlightenment begins with the focusing of the mind and following a number of commandments.
Morality, meditation, and wisdom. So, not to kill, not to steal, not to have any sexual misconduct, not to tell a lie, and not to indulge in intoxicating drinks or intoxicants.
This was the way of life established by the Buddha in the very first Sangha. After 8 years, he went back to the palace and the family he'd abandoned. We're told his father now forgave the Buddha for the deep hurt he had caused. King Sadhodana now realized the importance of his son's quest. His stepmother even begged to join his Sangha, and she went on to become history's first nun.
The Buddha is justified in the eyes of all Buddhists of even leaving his wife and child to go on his solitary journey to try and find what the solution to life's problems is and how life should be lived. And for him, how life should be lived is the question, infinitely more important than having any possessions or even the company of loved ones.
The Buddha was to abandon his family again. He set out to teach for 40 years, passing on to his followers the wisdom he had attained beneath the Bodhi tree. But before he left, he ordained his son as a monk. The Buddha encouraged his followers to live together in a monastery or sangha to help them focus on the path to enlightenment.
Some people become a monk purely to meditate, purely to practice meditation, purely to practice a life of recluse. Some become monk to work for the propagation of the religion.
Monks from all over the world come to live in monasteries established around the temple of the Bodhi tree. Non-monks or lay Buddhists come here too to learn from them. Monks must be celibate and give up every selfish desire.
That is one part of the training, to get rid of self-tendencies, tendencies to always think about yourself, but you put yourself fully in the context of the community, of the Sangha.
Then, when all the sacrifices have been made, the hard work begins, committing long chants or mantras to memory. Mantras such as this have a purpose. They are designed to test the monk's memory, concentration, and commitment to the Buddha's teachings. Over the centuries, his message has evolved into a number of different traditions with their own interpretations and monastic practices. But the Buddha taught that lay people can also follow the path to eternal bliss and ultimate wisdom.
Most Westerners are not drawn to Buddhism as a way of leaving society behind. They're drawn to the practice of meditation as a way to be more effective within society. And so that's a way in which the message of Buddhism takes on a very different cast, because it becomes a form of self-improvement, a way of dealing with the stresses of life, a way of clarifying your goals and objectives.
Many Westerners are especially attracted to Buddhist meditation.
All of us sometimes glimpse that magic and mystery of the moment. What meditation does is help us touch that more often. It helps us to be more calm and controlled in our mind, that we can recreate conditions that allow us to come into a state of awareness of interdependence, of impermanence, of nirvana.
Some schools of Buddhism believe the Buddha was superhuman, a magical figure who consorted with gods and performed miracles. Others that he was no more than a human being, and they believe it is this that adds power to his message.
There's no doubt that the Buddha wished to be remembered as a human being, with human frailties, not perhaps frailties of the intellect or moral frailties, but certainly physical frailties. The Buddha suffers from back pain, for example. Towards the end of his life, he suffers from various physical complaints and weaknesses.
The Buddha would die at the age of 80 from a common illness, food poisoning. It is said that before passing away, he fell into a deep trance on his journey from this world to nirvana, a state of eternal bliss, free at last from rebirth, free at last from suffering and death. A council was assembled to record for posterity the Buddha's teachings. These were learned by heart and handed down the centuries by generations of monks. The Buddha's body was cremated and his remains were preserved. They were enshrined 200 years later by India's first emperor king, Ashoka, who converted to Buddhism. He built vast monuments or stupas and erected pillars to mark the key sites of the Buddha's life.
Ashoka then becomes absolutely a key figure, both in terms of the actual spread of Buddhism, but then also as a model for future Buddhist leaders throughout Asia. They look back to Ashoka as the kind of ideal king and supporter of Buddhism.
So far as we know, the Emperor Ashoka, who ruled over 2/3 of modern India in the middle of the 3rd century BC, helped monks to send out missions to countries bordering India. Missionaries were sent up into Kashmir, to Nepal, and certainly to Sri Lanka. They converted the king gave his patronage to Buddhism, and Sri Lanka has therefore been a Buddhist country from that day to this. And in country after country, we know over many centuries that this is the way that Buddhism was successfully implanted.
Ashoka's pillars outlived Buddhism in India. They withstood Muslim invasions and survived to catch the attention of the first colonial archaeologists.
This gave a very significant impetus to the